Well, okay. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for having, well, you got so excited you're knocking all this stuff off the counter. Thank you for having me here. This is a result of a survey that I did fill out. I've been a customer since 2002. I have the original oil change member club card here. This is back when we used to show our card. Well, actually, this was back when there were only 10 of us, and we'd all walk in here and get our oil changed because a bunch of people worked in the Axiom facility right over there. So we used to refer to the walk over here as the Trail of Tears. And we'd come over because truly, let's be reality based here. Getting your car serviced is not like a joyful trip to the county fair. It's like going to the dentist. It is not as if I can leave here and say, oh my God, I'm so excited about my new fuel filter. It's just, it doesn't bring that type of experience to somebody's life. So you guys have to go a big extra step to make people, first of all, do that, because it is important. It is like going to the dentist. It is like doing those other things that are about life and home and car maintenance. And if you don't do them, you get in trouble. So you've got that going for you. But the fact is that there are things that people would rather spend their money on. And there are things that are more interesting to people than a fuel filter and having their belts changed. So you've got that with which you have to contend. And then we're going to talk about a day in the life, which is something else that you have to contend with. And hopefully my sharing that information with you will help you to say, you know, there's some gaps out there in terms of what we do. And if we close those gaps, our customers will have a better experience. We will not only get more customers, but we'll retain the ones we have. I don't know if you've done any of the math here as to how much more it costs you to get a new customer than it costs you to retain a customer. Trust me, you want to retain your customers. Do you have that handy in your head?
I can tell you that what it costs me to get each customer that walks in this door is about $125 each to walk through the door.
So you want to keep your customers?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to take about 5 minutes and tell you about my day in the life when a day in my life when I'm not bringing my car in. And I'm not doing that for self-aggrandizement. I'm doing that so that you understand I'm not all that different from everybody else out there. We're busy people with busy lives. And so when I do have to make time to bring my car in, it's hard. So typically, okay, here's a day in the life. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I have 20 minutes to drink a cup of coffee and have all sorts of silent time to myself. That's all I get. Then I hit my theme song music, which is the theme song from the Wizard of Oz and the Wicked Witch of the West, do 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 do. So I plug that in and I head out the door because I teach an early morning fitness class every morning at the Little Rock Athletic Club. So I have 30 or 40 people who show up because that's an important part of their day, and so I need to be tuned into what's important to them. I spend a little bit of time with them afterwards because people always want to talk to me about their body fat and their heart rates and things like that, and I owe them that time. So that gives me about 30 minutes to get back to my house and make the transition, which includes eating, taking a shower. My associates at Axiom appreciate that. Doing something with my hair. Often it looks like this. And then heading downtown. So then the next piece of my day is joyful as well because I get to drive with all the other people who are texting and driving, and I don't text and drive. I put my cell phone in the back seat of my car. Let that be a lesson to all of you. And I don't use it. So I can't use my drive time to be productive. I have to just drive. But it's like a defensive maneuver. You have to do that to stay alive out there. But it takes 30 minutes to get downtown. Then I'm downtown all day long. I work for Axiom Corporation, and there I'm on this really cool team called the Rapid Innovations Team. And something that you'll find very interesting is what I'm building right now is called a marketing maturity model. And what that does is takes all of the important pieces of marketing a business, like you're doing here, and it assesses a client at a current state, and then it tells the client what the optimal state is. And it helps them know if I want to advance, here's where I am, here's where I want to be, how do I get there? And we do that for the biggest corporations in the world. So some of that could be helpful to you here. And I'm certainly willing to help you look at different pieces of your business with that kind of a point of view. So that's a long day, and I travel for a living. So my calendar tends to be, I block everything on Outlook. So my calendar tends to be just solid, and sometimes I'm triple and quadruple booked because what we're doing right now is quite transformational to our business. And there are only 4 of us who do it, so we're very popular. So we've got a line at the door. So I don't take breaks. I don't go to lunch. This is the second time I've gone to lunch this year, and you're it. So you better be good dates. But look, it's me and like 20 guys. Does it get any better than this? I don't think so. So because I have then a whole lot of free time in my day, I also started a side business called Hot Flash Workouts. So if any of you need stocking stuffers for your girlfriends and your wives, we have DVDs. But that takes another piece of the day. And we had a big article in the newspaper this morning, so that means that the shipping and handling department for Hot Flash Workouts will be busy tonight. And guess who the shipping and handling department is? Oh, that would be me. So I have a full day. And I think other people are just like that. Whether they're dealing with kids or whether they're dealing with whatever. People have busy, busy days. So when they have to take a day to come here, they have to make adjustments in their day. So when I come here, I have to look at my month and say, when do I have a day when I'm not traveling, when I don't have to be downtown for these things, so that I can work from my house, which is actually out on the west end of town. And the reason I have to do that is because the shuttle service doesn't get me to where I need to be fast enough. So I have to shuttle myself. So I have to allow for an extra hour in my day, 15 minutes over here, 15 minutes to get myself back, and then another 15 minutes over and back at the end of the day. Used to be that I could run over here, but I can't run anymore because I limp and I'm old, so I have to get driven over. So it's a time thing. So first of all, you have to make sure that your value proposition to your customer is enormous, because it takes extra time in their day to be able to come here, so it better be a good experience. So that's one thing. The shuttle service is really nice for people who have time. The last time I took the shuttle was a long, long time ago, and I think there was, I don't know who was driving the shuttle, but I think he was like 110. And I love the fact that you would pay attention to that and say, we have this service for our customers. But I could have gotten out of the van and run alongside it and gotten there faster. So for people who are really busy, and that's not just me, that's everybody. You know, we're sitting there in the back of the van going, got to get there, and we're not getting there fast enough. So it's a nice service, but it doesn't always work in everybody's day. So again, you have to understand that people need to make accommodations for themselves to come here. And so it needs to be a very worthwhile experience. Once you're here, you guys are delightful. I like every single one of you. I even like the people I don't know very well. And that's a really nice thing. I like the way that you pay attention. I like the way that you're really amping up. And I love the fact that you're paying attention to the type of business that you run, and to the fact that people aren't comfortable dealing with the old style garage mechanic. Just like, well, yeah, little lady, we'll just take care of this. You'd never treat people like that, and that's wonderful. What does happen, though, and where I would make a suggestion, is that when my car care is explained to me, last time I came in, for example, I was smelling gasoline, and so my assumption is there's something with a leak in it that's allowing that smell to be there. So the first thing I heard was diagnostics, diagnostics, diagnostics. And I thought, wow, that's like going to the dentist or going to the doctor and saying, you know, my arm hurts, I think it's broken. And him saying, let me take a look at your leg first. So I need somebody, I think a lot of, especially females are like that, but maybe men too, that we need to hear that you're first paying attention to what we raised as an issue before the standard diagnostics, because what people are equating standard diagnostics to is money. And what they're equating that is money that maybe I don't really need to spend. So I'm not quite sure how to approach that differently. Maybe terminology, maybe to say this is the reason that we do these things, because it saves you from this, 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 and this. Oh, and we do this one and it doesn't even cost you anything. We do it because we want you to be safe in your car. So I don't know what the answer to that. My perception of that is that I'm getting assessed and diagnostic to death, and that there's more there than I really need. But that is just my perception. But perception is reality, so you have to deal with that. Okay? Another thought is in terms of communication. And we now live in the age and times where people communicate it's no longer just pick up the telephone. As a matter of fact, very few people like to communicate that way. Most people don't have landlines. I don't have one. I like to be communicated with by text message, because then I can read it at my convenience, and I don't have somebody trying to call me when I'm in a meeting. I think most customers are like that, but you can't treat all customers the same way. So you have to somehow have a way in your file that you identify a customer as this is their communication preference, and then you have to pay attention to that. So if you look me up and say, well, this is Kris, We don't want to be talking to her. We'll just send her a text. I mean, that's what you really need to focus on doing because it will make your customer appreciate you more. So I'm trying to think of anything else in terms of a day in the life when I come in here. The only other call out that I would make would be to say that I'd love to just once get my car back early. It's been years since that has happened here. I used to bring my car over, I'd drop it off, and by noon somebody would have called and said, where are you? Your car's ready. And so I'd come over and pick it up. Now it's always end of day. Many times I have to call at like 4:30 or 5 and say, can I get it? And then most recently it spilled over to the next day. And that creates a hardship because there's expectations that I have to be places, and it's hard for me to rely on other people for transportation. Or, renting cars requires that I go get a car. So it's inconvenient for me not to get my car back in an expected time frame. So that seems all horrible and negative, and it isn't. It's just the reality of a day in the life when you have to have your car serviced. So think about what you're up against. So the fact that you are a group of very dedicated individuals who have this great company, and you have this great idea, and I mean, you have things that you pay attention to every day that says we're going to be a good company, we're going to pay attention to our customers. You do things that nobody else does. So just take those things and apply them as you learn. We do it all the time. We say, well, what's a best practice, and what are we doing that's not quite there? And then let's try to grow toward that. And do monthly goals, do yearly goals, whatever you do. To just try to move up along that spectrum of maturity in terms of how you deal with your customers and how you run your business. So, do you have questions for me?
I don't. I think you said it very well.
Well, thank you. Would you like me to say more?
Well,
Is there anything I missed?
I think you certainly have done a good job in helping us gain a newer perspective. Just as you said, is we try to continue to move, and these guys know that one of the thoughts that I have continually is that when you're through improving, you're through. And so we're constantly looking at that, and you're a part of that today. I mean, literally, Kris, it's just helping us have a perspective from that we need to have, that it's not just another car that's coming into our bay, that a customer has taken the time to bring their car to us. One, they had a choice in taking it to someone else, but two, that they would make time in their day. As you said, everybody's schedule they're all doing different things, but the time is like,
everybody's nuts.
Sit around and go,
right.
I'll get my car oil change today, or whatever. And so that's a perspective that we need. Yeah, you got a question?
Open sign on.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that you're very unusual in terms of this type of business or this genre of business with doing this type of exercise. And I applaud you on that because it really is a good thing to do.
Right.
It's great. But I would say that you're one of very few that do this. So you get a kudo for that.
Okay.
But you don't get to spin the wheel. I'm sorry.
I know. I get to give prizes.
You do.
Well, and of anything that I would want to come from today is, you guys know that I've said a lot lately. They've heard me say culture of excellence a lot. They've heard me say think like an owner a lot. And I know that can be hard to do when in Bay 1 or whatever Bay number you have. But I do think that what Kris brings to the table for us is that what is an owner, or what does an owner think about his customers? Well, the fact that my customer Kris and her husband Larry have been with us since 2002. This is 2013. I mean, that's 11 years that they've been a faithful customer of Parkway. And to go out and duplicate you and your husband.
Well, you just couldn't do it.
and to get other customers like that is very hard to do. And we have a lot of customers sort of like Kris and Larry, but not like Kris and Larry. I mean, they're very unique. And I think that that's a perspective I want my whole team to gain from today, is that every customer is unique. And every one of them do have individual lives that we need to consider when we walk through the day. The communication that can take place from the back to the front so that it gets to the customer can make all the difference in the world for her. If she were to get a text at 2 that said something about her car because she knew it was here, that can mean a lot.
Updates are great. You know, it's an interesting story that I heard recently. It had to do with healthcare. And it was for a big healthcare facility, and when they were bringing people out of the operating room, and I mean doing some dramatic, like a quadruple brain transplant, but I mean something huge. And when they would, so that was always very successful. And then the rehab center, the acute care center where they would send them afterwards, they had a really good success rate too, but people were dying in the middle. And I mean in droves. And that was because of the handoff. There were some assumptions made in the operating room, in the bays, that didn't get translated to the front. So they got lost in translation, and the people were dying in the middle. So that's where your people die. So as you take a look at processes and communication just here, as it moves from the back to the front, that's really important. So good point. Good point.
And that's how, and I think Dustin has probably helped us with this more than anybody that I've had on staff here, is getting those stories written in the words that you use to describe what's going on. As we said, always answering that question, why we are doing this or that, because that's the question they want answered each and every time. Why do I have to do this?
Right.
Why is it important? What's the benefit to me? What's in it for me, right? What's in it for me in the future? And our customers, like Kris, are dependent on each one of you to answer that question. Because I'll tell you, the advisors can't answer that question the way you men in the back can answer that question. Y'all can answer it fluidly and correctly and clearly. And then we've got to interpret that information correctly so that it gets to our customer right, so they don't die in the middle.
Well, and also for people like, for those of you who are younger than me, which is probably all of you, the way that car service used to be done is you'd find somebody that you could trust, and they'd go stick their head under your hood and say, well, here's what I think is wrong. And that was diagnostics. Cars were simpler back then. They weren't run completely on electronics. So now with all of the diagnostic work that you do, it's done for a reason. It's done because cars are more complicated. And sometimes people just need to hear that. I think they need a fuller explanation. You guys get it, because you work in that all the time. One of the things that I've had to learn in my role is that people don't understand my lingo. I have to translate it for them into common man terms. And you need to do the same thing. When you're talking about an electronics diagnostics or whatever else you're talking about, make it in language that is understood to the everyday man or everyday woman, so that they know exactly what you're doing and why. It doesn't need to be long and wordy. You could even work on a little bit of scripting that just gave you a bullet point for each thing that you do most commonly, and so that you just had that to fall back on, so that you could say, we're doing this and here's why. We're doing this and here's why. Do you have any questions? And always give somebody a chance to ask questions. Because some people want more information, some people don't.
Another catch that. I don't want you to miss what she just said. Give people an opportunity to ask questions. I think that's key. Now, I say that to my technicians, for my advisors, give them opportunity to ask questions and not feel defensive by it. And to you advisors, to allow your customers to ask questions and not feel defensive just because they ask you a question. And I think giving them a platform to ask a question takes talent, and skill. But it's a skill that can be learned.
Right. But also, if you just create a community of open dialogue for your customers, which you do a really good job of, just stop every moment, every once in a while, and take a breath, and give people a chance to ask, because they'll want to. So.
All right. Any questions from anybody? Yeah.
In regards to how you were approached with the testing for the fuel smell, what would be a better, again, just from a customer standpoint, what would be a better way to approach that with you? Did it almost seem like it was said too soon and very non-sensitive? Or I guess I'm just trying to figure out what would be a better way for me to approach a test and it not feel like you're relating to that money and you just me just wanting money out of it.
Well, that's a really good question, and I actually have an answer to that. I think a really good thing to do is if a customer says to you, I smell fuel, I smell gasoline. Say, well, first of all, we're just going to open up your hood and look. And we're going to see if there's anything glaringly obvious, like a hose flew loose or whatever, because that you would do that anyway, right? I mean, you're going to open the hood and you're going to go, oh, well, whatever. Because people want to know that you would take that's the right approach to do the thing that fixes the problem. And that's what you're trying to get to as quickly as you can. So if you say to a customer, we have guys who do this all the time. They're going to open up the hood and they're going to look. And they're going to crawl underneath and they're going to look. And if they see something obvious that explains this, then we're going to fix that. But sometimes it's not obvious. And if it's not, then we need to start looking further into the areas that we can't see, and that requires diagnostics. And so we would first do blah. And if that doesn't reveal anything, we would do blah. So people need to know that there's a process, but that the process starts with, we're going to do the best thing for you, which is we're going to take a look. Because that's what you want when you go to a doctor. You say, you know, my arm's at this funny angle. I think it's broken. You want them to look at your arm first and then figure out if there's anything else going on or if it's a hidden cause or something like that. So I think that's your response is we're going to take a look.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, guys? If we can, and we want, I think it's important my technicians hear that too, in that the things that are simple that we might just say as normal, we need to make sure we're explaining that to our customers, that they are going to look under the hood first. And for you men to know that that's what we are doing up here, we are telling them that. We're just going to look under the hood first as the example in the fuel smell. And then we'll move on from there. That's key. Mm-hmm. That's perfect. That's a great question, Danny.
Because really all the people who don't understand how cars run know is it smells funny, it sounds funny, or it just runs funny. Something's funny. So, you know, you say the first thing we do is we look to try to find the funny business. We eyeball it because we've got a really talented, skilled group of people who can do that. And if it isn't obvious, then we need to look a little deeper. So.
Cool. All right, you guys got any questions? Any questions? Dustin, got one? Dustin will be thinking about this for the next couple of days, and you'll come up with some questions for me. So,
that's fine. I'm never far away.
It made a lot of sense to first dispense with the shield that people have when they walk in the door. Auto repair business.
Yep.
And then get authorization after saying what we're going to do first, so that we're not wasting time pulling cars in and out because we can't go with the customer to say we got to go either. It has to be a two-shot deal where we put the customer at ease to know that we're going to do what we do anyways, and get authorization to go deeper because it usually does. So these guys aren't wasting time.
Yeah, so with that kind
That puts the
yeah.
customer's vehicle later in the day, which they don't want. So all of those things go into one. So we can't just VAS and not get authorization, because that puts a stop on everything.
Right.
As soon as we pop it.
That's a good point. How long has it been since you've actually just taken the time to follow a car all the way through your process and document everything? I mean, that would be interesting to do, right? So you can see if there are communication breakdowns or how much, if you have wasted effort, do you bring it in and bring it out and bring it in and bring it out? Well, you know, maybe that's not, and I don't know how much effort you've put into the actual mechanics of your process. But processes are, you know, there are people who make millions and millions and millions of dollars in process improvement, and my God, we can just do it right here for free.
That's right. That's right. So what Dustin is saying, for instance, if I approached the fuel smell issue as, you know, well, here's what we're going to do first. We'll just examine, you know, do a brief inspection, see if we can see anything obvious. Of course, that wouldn't be any charge.
Right.
But if there is a possibility that we don't see anything with that initial inspection, can I go ahead and have approval for testing?
Yeah, and that would be the thing to do, right? Because it lets you get further in your process faster. True?
Yeah, efficiency is.
Yeah. So then at least you'd be able to get through, if you're going to have a good idea of what you need to do to figure out what's wrong. Okay, her car smells like gasoline. Well, let's first look and make sure that there's not just a visible slice or hole or whatever could be that. So we're going to do that first. And then say, if it's not that, what would you do next? I don't know. But whatever you do next, at least get yourself clearance to move through those first 2 steps. And then say if we need to go further than that, we'll call you. But don't have yourself having to communicate too many times. Don't set expectations that you wouldn't be able to live up to. But then, of course, delight your customer by every once in a while saying, well, you know, Rodeo looked under the hood and he said, it's right there. And we fixed it, and it's going to be $3.99 and off you go. So those kinds of things I think resonate really well with people.
Here's a lot about me, my business, and the people that work here. So, I mean,
Well, and I also applaud what you do, because not everybody's bold enough to put a customer up in front of. They would do it, they do it in the.
Not every customer's bold enough.
But they would hide in the back room and say.
I'm like, yeah, right.
But most people would have a private conversation and then just maybe share snippets with you guys. But he's willing to sit out here, and he didn't know if I was going to say, Mike, dude, you're doing some things, and it's all you. He had no idea. So that's brave, but it's honest. And you have to appreciate the honesty that's at the core of this business. So.
That's one thing that's not lacking here is the honesty.
Blocks of people who break out into similarities. And you're going to have this group who you might call the frenzied working person. And you might have this person who's the I'm never in a hurry kind of person. And then you can start to you can actually label them. And we do all, we have this, of course I work for Axiom, and that's what we do with people. We do what we used to call profiles, but then we decided that wasn't a good happening current kind of word, so we call them portraits. But you actually you can determine what people are going to do by their behaviors.
Yeah, I've heard it said this way: give it a name. So this is my Sydney, for example. Mm-hmm. That everybody that is like Sydney is Sydney.
Yep.
We need to get Sydney downtown. And everyone then would know Sydney needs to get downtown.
Yeah.
yeah.
So when Sydney walks in, or when any of the 23 other Sydneys you have come in, the shuttle driver's waiting. He's already got all you have to do is let's take a quick look. We need to understand if you have anything you need us to particularly pay attention to. Bing, 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 and she's out the door.
It personalizes the business for them.
And if you could hand him a double espresso on the way out.
That's been mentioned before about having a coffee bar here. We might have to expand the front porch.